Chaotic Sword God Chapter 1, Jian Chen. Chapter 1 Jian Chen. Among the vast expanse of mountains, two sword-shaped peaks with a height of 1 foot are separated by 100 meters away from the sea of clouds. The two sword-shaped peaks are very steep, and it seems that two enlarged versions of the Excalibur are inserted between the heavens and the earth. There is no place for rock climbing. At the top of the two sword-shaped peaks, there is less than 100 meters away from the sea of clouds in the sky, and at the top of the mountain, there is a faint mist, covered by fog, making the mountain peak. The scenes of the hustle and bustle are all confused and unclear, but in the vagueness, you can still find the two sword-shaped peaks. There are two people standing there quietly, as if they are a stone sculpture, not moving. Only the wind in the sky blew the clothes of the two and the hair drifted in the wind. One of these two people seems to be only a young man who is only 20 years old. The young man is very handsome, and his handsome facial features are perfect. It is unparalleled in the world. It is the killer of all the young girls in the world. A pair of bland eyes have a unique appeal, very charming, as if it can be breathtaking. The young man has a long black hair, straight to the waist, long hair without any restraint, very casually draped behind him with the whistling wind blowing, and on the back of the young man, carrying a long sword. The sword of the long sword was wrapped in a thick white cloth, and only a subtle sword handle exposed outside was seen. The name of the light breeze was clearly engraved on the hilt, but it was strange. The whole sword of the long sword did not make any ropes, as if it was sucked on the backs of young people, and did not fall down. This scene seems to be difficult to understand. The young man named Jian Chen, now the first master of the famous reputation on the rivers and lakes, is also known as the title of the sword god, is a generation of swordsmen. The first-hand fast sword method has already reached the peak of the gods, the peak of the world. However, his age is only in his 20s. For Jian Chen, the people in the rivers and lakes know very little about the details. Besides knowing that he is an orphan, and there is no door to the other, he knows nothing about it. His origins are like a mystery. He is one. No one knows how to learn from the high-powered martial arts and the subtle swordsmanship. On the sword-shaped mountain 100 meters across from him, a tall man wearing a black robe stood there, facing the sword dust. This man is an old man and looks like he is 50 or 60 years old. Looks like a crane, a child's face, a pair of old eyes and a god. The eyes are so glamorous, the sharp eyes are like a sharp sword, people dare not look at it, and in his hands, holding a generous black giant sword, but what is weird is that his giant sword is actually not edged. This old man is a legendary figure who has disappeared in the rivers and lakes for hundreds of years. He is alone and seeks defeat. He is only one of his titles. No one knows his real name and identity, because as early as 100 years ago, he is a super powerful person who has been invincible in the world. Nowadays, people who know some information about the singularity of the singer are still few in the world. However, his brilliant glory in the past is still it has been passed down from generation to generation, and today, 100 years later, his strength is better than ever. Now, no one can know the strength of the solitary defeat. Solitary and defeated, a pair of eyes quietly watching the 100 meters away from the age of 20 years old, the sword dust. The eyes are extremely sharp, as if the sword is sharp, the eyes are flashing from time to time. Sword dust, at such a young age, is not weaker than the old man's strength, and your rumor on the kendo has reached a height that even the old man can't reach. Unfortunately, you kill my only love, this hatred. I have to report that today, in any case, I have to ask for justice for my only one. Solitary screams and says, the seemingly calm tone is full of people who are chilling and chilling. Meaning. Jian Chen's face was calm, his eyes were faintly watching the solitude and defeat, and the white robes on his body fluttered in the wind, and the long hair that was wasted was blown by the wind and looked so good. This is no stranger to me. It is your apprentice who took the initiative to offend me. As for the death of my sword, I can only blame him for not being good at learning. Jian Chen's lips gently opened and closed, and a faint voice spit out from his mouth. Duo seeks to defeat the anger and laughs. Good one is not refined, then I will meet you today, see how much you have the ability, can you put the old man in your hands that light under the wind sword? Said, the solitary defeated the hand of the black iron épée in the hand. Suddenly, a powerful sword of swords out of the sword, with a fierce sword gas to the lightning speed like 100 meters away from the sword dust. The calmness of Jian Chen's face, with the sound of a sword scabbard, the long sword behind the back appeared in the hands of Jian Chen, which is 4 feet long, wide slender whole sword. There was a layer of silver-white swordsman on the body, and then the sword in the hands of Jian Chen quickly stabbed them out. I saw a sword that was so strong that the sword was out of the sword, and the sword could not be captured by the naked eye. Air strikes. Boom! The two swords collided in the air, bursting into a loud bang, deafening, and the powerful natural gas after the explosion centered on the explosion point, quickly spread out in all directions, and scattered the faint mist around the clouds. Then, Jian Chen and Du Gu were defeated and flew up at the same time. They broke away from the mountain peaks standing under their feet and flew between the two peaks. They fought fiercely in midair. The speed of the two men's shots was extremely fast, and the sound of collision and friction of the weapons rang in the air. The strong swordsmanship shot from the two people's battles to the surrounding, and made a big hole on the surrounding peaks. Countless gravels fell toward the ground under 1,000 feet. In just a few breaths, Jian Chen and Du Gu and the two defeated each other quickly and fought hundreds of rounds. Later, when the two fell on two peaks, they only saw their bodies slightly embarrassed. On the clothes that were originally intact, there have been many cracks and they have become a bit ruined. Solitary and defeated a serious look at the sword dust. The look became very dignified. Shen Sheng, fast sword, no wonder you can't break the sword in the river, but you can't help the old man. The solitary defeated the tone and paused. He continued, it is difficult for us to score the difference. It is better to use the strongest blow at the same time. One move will be a winner. Suddenly, the momentum of the solitary defeat suddenly the skyrocketing is like a giant sword, straight into the sky. The face of Jian Chen became dignified. Then, the body also exudes a huge momentum, no more than a single orphan. The momentum of the two people continued to climb, covering the sky and covering the entire sky. The combination of the two forces directly covered the entire mountain for a distance of 10,000 miles. Even the clouds in the sky were rushed by the momentum of the two. There was a big hole, and it quickly dissipated. The wind screamed in the sky, and the screaming ghosts screamed and screamed. In the mountains and forests, countless birds and beasts screamed in horror, and they fled their limbs to the distant place. The momentum of the two peaks is constantly increasing, and they are brewing the strongest blow. Hey! Hey! Not far from the mountains and forests, many small trees could not withstand the powerful momentum of the two people, and they broke off at the waist, and then they were rushed to the sky by the huge momentum of the two men, flying far away. As the dust of the sword and the loneliness of the two climbed up, there was a strong real airflow around the bodies of the two of them, surrounded by two people rotating rapidly, flowers and trees, both of them the powerful momentum bends against the pressure, and countless trees swayed and swayed. At the same time, the light wind soared in the hands of Jian Chen and the black iron épée that was solitary and defeated all exude a dazzling white light and black light. The true airflow between the two people is getting stronger and stronger. In the end, the whole body of the sword dust is wrapped in a thick white light, and the solitary defeat is also wrapped in a layer of black light. The two people have completely lost their shadows. In the midair, I saw the brilliance of the two groups of colors. Hey! The sword in the hands of Jian Chen is light and trembling. At this moment, the dazzling swordsmanship has been lit up on the sword. The powerful swordsman makes people feel scared. His long black hair fluttered in the wind, and the white robes were drifting in the wind. The whole body was hanging up and standing. It seemed to be of war and might not be defeated. When the momentum of both of them climbed to the apex, suddenly, the two men simultaneously screamed and screamed at the same time, sounding like a thunder, suddenly thundering, deafening, then, seeing a beautiful white light and dark black man's the lightning-fast speed collided and disappeared in an instant. There is no imaginary collision sound. When everything calms down, I saw that Jian Chen and Du Gu and the two have changed their positions. They are separated by a distance of 100 meters and stand on the top of the two peaks. Both of them look like their faces. Very pale, and on the chest of Jian Chen, the bright red blood quickly rushed out, quickly dyed his white robe red. Just after the lightning like staggered and obsolete, the solitary defeat has been pierced by a sword. His heart. However, he lost his entire right arm and lost his right arm. He was unable to take the sword. The black iron épée that was taken in his right hand had already fallen to the cliff under the mountain. After a sword pierced the heart of the sword dust, it also lost an arm. Jian Chen stood quietly on the mountain peak, and a stream of blood slowly flowed out of his mouth, and his face became paler and paler. In a short period of time, he was already pale, the heart was pierced by a sword, and it was already in a desperate situation. Ha ha ha. Suddenly, the solitary defeat on the top of the mountain peak suddenly burst into laughter and laughed loudly. Jian Chen, with your talent, if you are giving you a few years, the old man is definitely not yours. Opponents, unfortunately, although your strength is not worse than that of the old man, it is still in the hands of the old man. Here, the solitary sighs and sighs, said, hey. Generation of Tianjiao is so ruined. In the hands of the old man, it is indeed regrettable, but in order to report the hatred of the killers, the old man has to do the same. Feeling his own vitality that is continually passing away, Jian Chen slowly closed his eyes. At this moment, he seems very calm. For him, life and death may not be valued. After all, these years are swaying in the rivers and lakes. After killing a lot of people, I have already been obsessed with life and death. The only regret in my heart is that I will never have the opportunity to explore the ultimate in Kendo. Just as Jian Chen fell into a situation of no sadness and no joy, suddenly, a strange feeling appeared in the mind of Jian Chen. At this critical moment, the soul of Jian Chen seemed to be integrated with the long sword in his hand, even if he even if he and the sword, no longer separate each other, as if the sword in his hand has become part of his soul. At the same time, a pure and powerful world of heaven and earth descended from the heavens and the earth, and the mind of Jian Chen flowed into his mind with a trace of his mind, perfectly combined with his soul, along with the world. Injecting the gas, Jian Chen clearly felt that his God was growing rapidly at an incredible speed. At the same time, his soul seemed to be out of the body and flew to the endless mountains and fields. At this moment, the scenes within a radius of 10 miles are clearly in the mind of Jian Chen, and even the mosquitoes on the ground can clearly feel their activities. At this extreme of death, he actually broke through. Chaotic Sword God Chapter 2, Changyang Xiangtian. Chapter 2 Changyang Xiangtian. Suddenly, the sword in the hands of Jian Chen was out of the control of Jian Chen. At this moment, the long sword seemed to become a spiritual sword. It turned into a light and flashed at a speed of 100 meters. Solitary and desperate to shoot. The speed of the long sword is very fast, and it is incredible. When the singer has just reacted, the long sword has already arrived at the throat of the singer, and then with a strong sword, in the stunned eyes of the solitary directly passed through his throat, after the sword was surrounded by a layer of white swords, a large circle in the air, and automatically flew back to the hands of Jian Chen. There is a fist-sized hole in the throat of the solitary defeat. Although the sword in the hands of Jian Chen is very thin, the swordsman around the blade still expands the wound in the sore throat to the size of a fist. The solitary seeker defeated his eyes and stared at the sword that had returned to the hands of Jian Chen. He couldn't believe it, as if he saw the most incredible thing in the world. He opened his mouth slightly. It seems I want to say something, but unfortunately his throat has been pierced, and he has been unable to speak. Finally, with a face full of unwillingness and horror, he slowly falls down. Jian Chen held a long sword and silently looked at the one-of-a-kind defeat that was one step ahead of himself. The heart sighed secretly. I didn't expect that at this last moment, he actually broke through again and reached the realm of the sword. But at this time, he is not far from death. With a secret sigh, the look in Jian Chen's eyes gradually dimmed. Although the strength broke through again, it was difficult to escape. After all, his heart had been pierced by a sword. Subsequently, Jian Chen also stepped into the footsteps of the solitary defeat, and the body slowly fell down. At the moment when Jian Chen had just fallen, the two sword-shaped peaks that he and Du Guji had respectively stood up and suddenly made a loud noise. The whole mountain peak burst, and countless gravels were moving toward it. Surrounded by glare, the purple and blue light of the sky filled the sky and shone the heavens and the earth. At this moment, the whole sky was filled with purple and blue light. Unfortunately, Jian Chen and Du Gu were unable to know what happened next. In a large and luxurious mansion, in a beautifully decorated house, a large group of people gathered in front of a room, and the first person was a young man walking around the door. Face there is an indescribable anxiety and a bit of worried look. The young man is about 30 years old and looks good. Although he is close to middle age, he still can't conceal his handsome face in the year. He only saw him wearing it. A white robe embroidered with gold silk, the body has a breath of the upper class, the face of fortitude, a pair of brows have been wrinkled tightly at this moment. Outside the distance of 3 meters from the door, a group of about 30 people stood there with anxiety. There were old and young, and the older one seemed to be 60 or 70 years old. It was full of white hair and wrinkles on his face. However, the eyes flashed with trepidation. From the light in their eyes, they even thought they were not like a single. An elderly man, but a middle-aged man with a strong body and a fierce dragon. Most of the rest are middle-aged men aged between 30 and 40. They are all arrogant and astounding. At first glance, they know that they are extraordinary people. In the room opposite them, there was a constant flow of a woman with a painful snoring. "Madam, hard, it's coming out soon, it's coming out soon." A little eager voice followed, and the voice looked a little old. When you heard it, you know that the master of the voice is not low. And still women. Outside the door, the middle-aged man who walked anxiously in front of the door suddenly stopped. He said eagerly, "Hey. This is all day and night, and Yuner hasn't been born yet. If you drag on like this, I am afraid that it will also cause adverse effects on Yuner." The voice of the young man is full of worries and he is worried. "Home, you can rest assured, Mrs. Yun will be fine, you must not forget that Mrs. Yun is a bright sage." A woman with white hair and wrinkles on his face persuaded the voice, although the tone was full confidence, but the look of the face is still not concealed. Wearing a white robe, the young man with a temperament on his body sighed again and again, and the look of anxiety on his face was still unresolved. Then a group of people waited for more than 2 hours outside the door. Finally, an excited voice came out from the room, "Home, Mrs. Yun was born, Mrs. Yun was born, mother and son are safe, a boy." The voice is full of excitement. The sound of the voice, the worried look on the face of the young man waiting outside the door, was finally swept away, replaced by the excitement of the face, and then did not say anything, directly pushed open the door and disappeared. No, the speed is really incredible, definitely not the ability of an ordinary person. The young man came to a big bed in the room in an instant, sitting on the edge of the bed, watching the woman lying on the bed with concern. "Yi, how are you? You are fine." The voice is soft and full concerns. Lying in bed is a young woman of about 20 years old. She looks beautiful and beautiful. She is a national beauty. A glamorous face is already sweaty, her face is slightly white, and her face is tired. Color. The woman looked at the young man with a tired look, and a smile appeared on her face. I am fine, let me see our children." Good. Clouds are fine." The young man's face showed a happy smile, then turned to look at the midwife holding the child next to him. When he was about to speak, he saw the brow of the midwife tightly wrinkled together, staring strangely at the baby being held in his arms. His hands kept playing, his mouth kept whispering, "Cry, your child. Why don't you cry? Strange, I have been born for so long, there are not thousands of children born in my hands, but there are also hundreds of them. I am the first time I saw a child who didn't cry when I was born." At this time, a group of people outside entered the room indefinitely, with a smile on each face, and they were facing the woman lying in bed. The middle-aged man had a happy smile on his face and said softly to the woman lying on the bed, "Yun, you lay down for a while, I will take the child over." Then the young man got up and came there. The name of the midwife said, "What is going on, is there any problem with this child?" The young man's tone is so heavy that some children are born with a natural emergency, which is very common and happens. There are still many times, and he is really afraid of what is wrong with his children. Hearing, the midwife's face looked bitterly, looking at the young man, and the tone was respectful, I don't know if there is any problem with the young master, but according to my experience of decades of delivery, every child will cry when they are born, but the situation of the young master is a bit different. You see, he just didn't make a cry when he was born. This is very strange. Hearing the words, the young man frowned and looked at the baby who was held in the hands of the pickup. He saw that the baby's big eyes with no bright impurities were turning around and staring at it. I will stare at it for a while, very cute, and it looks like there is no problem. However, he did not see it, in the depths of the baby's bright and unobtrusive eyes, but with deep shock and cannot believe. Subsequently, the young man put one hand on the baby's body, and suddenly there was a layer of glare from the palm of his hand. Seeing the movements of the young man, the look on the face of the midwife has become a little uneasy. She is just a little midwife, who belongs to the bottom of the life. She is really afraid of the problems of the baby in her arms. Otherwise, the young man blames it, and the consequences are not what she can do. Although this matter has nothing to do with her, she has no ability to justify it. The young man quickly retracted his hand, and the heart in his heart was finally released. His face showed a happy smile and said, "The child is well behaved and there is no problem at all." I took the baby from the midwife. After listening to this, the midwife suddenly breathed a sigh of relief, and the heart that was carried was finally put down, and a smile on his face was revealed. The owner said that maybe this represents the young master. Uncommon, in the future, the young master will become a peerless powerhouse. After listening to the words of the midwife, the young man, despite knowing that everything was very embarrassing, still couldn't help but laughed and said, "Good, good, good, I hope so, come, hit 100 gold coins for the mother of the flood." Hearing the words, the midwife looked very happy, and suddenly said with excitement, "Thank you for the reward of the owner, thank you for your reward." The young man came to the woman lying in bed with her baby and looked happy. "Yun, look, this is our child, how long it is." The woman, known as Yuner, reached out and hugged the baby. The relatives kissed the baby's face and said with a happy face, "Feijuan, since the child is a boy, according to our previous agreement, the child was named Changyang Xiangtian." The young people laughed and said, "Yes, now I officially give the child a name in Changyang Xiangtian, come and invite all the guests in the city of Lore. I will have a feast in my Changyang house tomorrow, so I will celebrate it." In a twinkling of an eye, time has passed for a year. In front of a small lake in a large courtyard, a little boy who is less than a meter tall is standing there, his eyes staring at the center of the small lake. Rockery, the little boy is wearing a gorgeous dress, the look on his face is very complicated, so the look of a boy who is less than 3 years old at first glance, looks quite different. This little boy is Changyang Xiangtian. At this moment, in the mind of Changyang Xiangtian, there is a scene of a thrilling scene that seems to be slowly moving like a movie. It is in an endless mountain range. In the 2 sword-shaped peaks, one is only in his 20s. The very handsome young man is holding a long sword, and he is fighting fiercely with the peerless masters who have been invincible 100 years ago. At the time of the death, the strength once again broke through and reached the realm of the sword of the gods, and the only ones were defeated and the sword was worn, so that both of them would eventually die together. Chaotic Sword God Chapter 3, Smelting. The third chapter of the body. Changyang Xiangtian looked at his short body, and his heart sighed secretly. The complexion was full of complexities. During this time, these pictures in the brain have not been known how many times they have appeared. Now think of it. These things seem to happen yesterday, the memory is so clear, as if deep imprinted in the depths of his soul. How can I forget, now? He has long understood that his past life is Jian Chen, dead. After that, the inexplicable reincarnation of the soul and memory came over. Since Jian Chen had retained the memory of previous life just after he was born, he learned the language here just after he was born. Later, based on the conversations among the people in the paradise, he has already roughly understood what the family he was born in is exactly what it is. The existence of the same, at the same time, also a general understanding of the world is not the world that you have lived, but another new world, a world that Jian Chen has never heard of. The huge house name of Jian Chen is called Changyang House, which is one of the 4 families in Luo'er city. It has a pivotal position in the whole city of Luo'er, and his father is Changyang. The owner of the house, named Changjiangba, and his mother, named Bai Yunchen, is the fourth priest of Changyang House's chief Yangjiangba. It is not the main house. However, his mother's position in Changyang is not low. Because she is a bright sage. Although Jian Chen is not clear about what Guangming Xingshi is, he also understands that his mother has a very high status in the entire Changyang prefecture because of the identity of the Light Master, and is respected by many people. The sword dust itself is the four young masters of Changyang prefecture, with a very lofty identity. On the sword dust, there are two older brothers, one sister, the big brother Changjianghu, the second sister Changyang Mingyue, the third brother Changjiang. They and the sword dust are born to each other. In addition to the big brother Changjianghu, the second sister Changyang Mingyue and the third brother Changyang Kajian dust have seen several times, are children who are older than the sword dust, the oldest second sister, just 4 years old this year, then Jian Chen was 3 years old, and the third brother Changyang Ku was 2 years older than Jian Chen. He was just 3 years old this year. In addition to them, there are many children belonging to the disciples in Changyang. At this time, an old man dressed as a butler came to Jian Chen and said with a soft voice, "For young masters, time is not early, my wife told you to go back." When I heard the sound, Jian Chen came back to God. When I saw the sky, I suddenly realized that the sky was already playing. It was the sign that the night was coming, and I was unconscious. Jian Chen had stood here for an afternoon. Jian Chen nodded slightly and said, "I know, Chang Bo, I will go back soon." The man named Jian Bo by Jian Chen is the steward of Changyang House. Almost everything in Changyang House is taken care of by him. His identity in Changyang is not low, even though Chang Bo is only a steward. However, in Changyang Prefecture, no respectful look is revealed to anyone, and his identity is almost equal to that of Changyang House, the head of the Changyang House. Chang Bo's face showed a smile, and he looked at Jian Chen's gaze with a look of hope. Jian Chen's age of less than half a year can be done on the ground alone without relying on people's support. I can speak in 8 months, and my speech is clear. I have been able to communicate with people normally. With these 2 points, Jian Chen has faintly hanged the title of genius in Changyang Prefecture. It has become Changyang. The government expects the highest person. At night, Jian Chen went to the dining hall for dinner with his mother Bai Yuntian. The dining hall they used was a special dining hall. Only the owner of Changyang House and his own children and several diverticulums could use it. When Jian Chen and Bai Yuntian came to the dining hall, they had already sat on the round table and had 3 beautiful women. They were in their 20s, and they were 2 years old. A child who is not much bigger than the sword dust, a man and a woman. The boy looks like a 3 or 4-year-old, long and chubby, at the moment, sitting quietly on the bench. He is the third owner of the Changyang House. Also the 3 young masters of Changyang House, Changyang Ku. As soon as the sword dust came in, Changyang's small eyes were full of hostility and full of provocative meaning. Obviously, his heart had a slight prejudice against Jian Chen. Although the mothers including Jian Chen, the 4 women saw the hostility of the sword dust in Changyang's eyes, but none of them cared. In their opinion, this is just a child's play. It is harmless at all. The other little girl looks like she is 4 or 5 years old, with 2 small whip on her head, a pair of bright eyes filled with quirky elves, and a shallow smile with 2 small dimples hanging very cute. Just from the appearance of her young age, it is almost certain that when she grows up, she will definitely be a beautiful woman who will look down on the country. She is the second child of the owner of Changyang House, and the second lady of Changyang House, Changyang Mingyue, is the only daughter of the 4 children of Changyang House. "For brothers, you are coming, come to the seat." Seeing the sword dust coming in, the shallow smile on Changyang Mingyue's face became more splendid, and quickly greeted him. Jian Chen nodded slightly to Changyang Mingyue, and he even said hello, and then sat down with his mother to the 2 empty positions on the round table. Jian Chen's mother, Bai Yuntian, looked at Jian Chen with a look of love and whispered, "Xiang heir, I've seen your aunts and 2 sisters." Jian Chen was helpless, looking at the few women who looked at the delicate, said, "I have seen aunts, 2 aunts, 3 aunts, 2 sisters, 3 brothers." Since knowing that Jian Chen has learned to speak, his mother Bai Yuntian is happy at the same time, but also hard to learn the most basic number of rituals, and Jian Chen holding the existing, then the idea of peace, there is no resistance to his mother's proposal, because he also knows that I will grow up in this new world in the future. When he first came here, Jian Chen also had a fierce struggle for his own identity. After all, he was a reincarnation of his previous life. Since he retains the memory of his previous life, he is still a sword dust, and for his present this identity, in the depths of Jian Chen, is still somewhat ruled out. However, as time goes by, he finally accepts his current identity. In any case, Baiyunchen is a mother of his own after all. Although I have inexplicably retained the memory of past lives after my death, that memory has happened in another world, and there is no relationship with it. Now, Jian Chen has hidden his previous things in his mind. I am going to accept everything here with a heartfelt heart. The three women looked at Jian Chen with a smile. One of the women wearing yellow and luxurious costumes said with a smile, "Young sister, Xiangtian is getting more and more sensible now, oh. It's hard to imagine he is a child who has just turned 1 year old. I really envy you. There is such a smart son." This woman wearing yellow and luxurious costumes is the second house lady of Changyang House's chief Yang Yangbao. The mother of Changyang Mingyue. "Yes, Yuner sister," the second sister said, "it is good. Now I find that I am more and more like Xiangtian." The woman sitting next to Jian Chen also said with a smile, though, but her eyes on Jian Chen are calm, "She is the three ladies of Changyang House, Yu Fengyan. Xiangtian is indeed the most talented child I have ever seen. When I was half-year-old, I walked alone. I can speak in 8 months. This is absolutely impossible for other children of the same age. I really look forward to the fullness of Xiangtian." At the age of 3, he carried out the test of the power and potential in the body. I hope that he will give us a surprise at that time. The woman who spoke is a little older, and she has a noble temperament. She is the owner of Changyang House. The first lady, named Ling Long. The exquisite voice just fell, and a slightly thick man's voice suddenly sounded, "Yeah, I am also looking forward to waiting for Xiang's 3-year-old to carry out the holy test, which will give us a surprise." With the voice I saw a young man of nearly 30 years old walked into the dining hall. The young man exuded the temperament of a superior, wearing a white robe with a gold silk edge and a long black hair covered on the shoulders, giving a very floating feeling. French. Father. When I saw this young man, the 7 people sitting at the table mountain stood up at the same time and shouted, and Jian Chen was no exception, whispering. This young man is the owner of Changyang Prefecture, Changjiangba. Changjiangba directly came to an empty position on the table and sat up with a soft smile on his face. He looked at the sword dust and said softly, "Xianger, is he still happy in the government?" Jian Chen nodded slightly and said, "All right." On the face of Changjiangba, there was a smile on his face. He continued, "Xianger, if you feel that the house is rather stuffy, go out and let go, and see the world outside. Know it, hey?" Jian Chen said softly. Seeing Jian Chen is so sensible, it is not like a child who just turned a year old. There is an indescribable happiness in Changyang's heart. The family had a good dinner and had a meal soon. After the meal, Jian Chen returned to his room alone. According to his age, he was supposed to sleep with his mother, Bai Yuntian, but Jian Chen took the initiative to ask himself to live alone in a room. For this problem, Jian Chen's attitude was very determined. In the end, his mother Bai Yuntian really couldn't help him. Finally, he had no choice but to agree. At night, the sword dust sat on the bed, his hands were steady on his knees, his palms were up, and he was doing 5-hearted posture, silently running the first layer of the purple sword. The Ziqing sword code is the biggest bargaining chip in the past 20 years This is a cultivation cheat. It not only records a very deep mind, but also has some powerful power. Sword trick. This Ziqing sword code is when Jian Chen was a child when he was playing in the mountains. He accidentally fell into a pool under the cliffs. He woke up and found it in a cave. Then he fished for fish every day. After 10 years of Jian Chen's academic success, when he was able to leap over the cliff, he flew up from the bottom of the cliff and returned to the ground. Jian Chen was an orphan. His parents died in the era of war. When he was a child, he was adopted by a good-hearted grandfather. When he came out of the cliff, he had been in the past 10 years and returned to the place. In the sleepy village, the grandfather who adopted it has passed away for many years. Finally, after the sword dust that has no dependence has been adopted to worship his grandfather, he left the small village and walked alone. Since the acceptance of the world and his current identity, Jian Chen began to practice the Ziqing sword code, and now he has been practicing for half a year. Chaotic Sword God Chapter 4, Practice Step. Chapter 4 Practice. The Ziqing sword code is divided into 12 layers. One of them is a smelt. As the saying goes, in order to have a strong martial arts, you must first have a strong body. After all, any martial arts moves rely on the body to perform. The first layer of the Ziqing sword code is about the method of smelting. Most of the martial arts people in the rivers and lakes rely on exercise, and do some mandatory actions to strengthen their body, so that they are strong, and even some people's muscles are one big one. Large bumps make the muscles of the whole body fast and clear, the naked eye is clearly visible, and even some people's body is as hard as steel. In the view of Jian Chen, this method of training the body is no different from destroying one's own body. It is simply trying to narrow down the function of one's own body. This will make your physical strength far more than ordinary people, but the same, to yourself. The body also causes a lot of damage. This kind of person often has a very short lifespan, especially when entering the old age, and there are a series of problems in the body. Among the martial arts people in the rivers and lakes, although some people in martial art have their own methods of smelting, these methods of smelting are not influential in the view of Jian Chen, and the fundamentals are not the right path. Even the Yijin Temple of Shaolin Temple is no exception. Although Yijinjing is both internal and external, it can be used to train internal forces. In addition, it can be used to train the skin and bones. However, in the case of Yijinjing, there is no deep-seated bone marrow for the exercise of the skin and bones. In the view of Jian Chen, Yijinjing is only able to exercise the skin and bones on the surface of the human body, and has not achieved the true effect of smelting. The method of smelting recorded in the Ziqing swordsmanship is a very deep and magical method. It pays attention to absorbing the air of the heavens and the earth, and then transforms the air of heaven and earth into the bone marrow of the flesh, making every body of the body. The parts, every cell, and even the internal organs of the internal organs and various organs have been strengthened, and they are depolarized in essence, which not only can achieve a good smelting effect, but also have endless benefits to the body. The life of the limit is extended, and when you cultivate to the later stage, your body will become stronger with your increasing internal force. It is more noted in the Ziqing sword code. If you can practice the method of cultivating to the highest level, it can even be the same as the world. However, the method of smelting is related to your own strength. Only the stronger the body in your body can make your body stronger. After all, the sculpt method recorded in the Ziqing sword code is the infuriating in the body. Into the whole body, once the strength of the body and the body of your body reach a balance point, you must break this balance as soon as possible, and strive to enhance the strength of the infuriating, so as to further enhance your physical body. The gas of the heavens and the earth is continuously absorbed by the sword dust, running in a specific cycle in the meridians of the body, and then under the control of the sword dust, it is integrated into every cell and the internal organs of the body. Since coming to this strange world, the only thing that excites Jian Chen is the atmosphere of heaven and earth. The atmosphere here is very strong, and it is more than 100 times thicker than the world he used to live in. His previous survival of the world has undoubtedly become a poor village, a paradise, a hell, between the two, simply cannot be compared. This is the only place where Jian Chen is happy. However, what makes Jian Chen puzzled is that the world's atmosphere in the world is comparable to the atmosphere of heaven and earth in his predecessor world. Although the two are roughly the same, Jian Chen has carefully discovered the world's world. There is a special amount of energy in the gas, which is only a small part of the gas of heaven and earth, and is closely connected with the gas of the heavens and the earth, as if it is one and the same, the two do not separate each other. When this energy was inhaled into the body by him, it did not produce any unsuitable state. Therefore, Jian Chen did not rule out this special energy that is different from the natural gas. But for this kind of energy, Jian Chen is also very curious. There is always a thought in the brain to hover, that is, this energy is not so simple. As the converted heaven and earth gas is continuously integrated into the flesh, Jian Chen also feels very clear that every cell in his body and the singular 8 veins and the internal organs of the body are constantly strengthening. The transformation of the heavens and the earth is like a big tonic for them. They seem to live alive, and they are desperately absorbing the air of these heavens and earth, as if they are a hungry tiger. At the same time, Jian Chen also felt that the body was so refreshing and uncomfortable, and there was a sense of comfort that could not be said. In a twinkling of an eye, another year has passed. Now, it has been 2 years since Jian Chen came to this strange world. In the past 2 years, Jian Chen has not had a step in Changyang, and he has been idle all day. It is the first layer of the heart of the Ziqing sword code, which is cultivated in his own room. Perhaps it is because the atmosphere of the heavens and the earth is 100 times stronger than the world where the sword dust was in the predecessor. This year has made great achievements in the refining, and now Jian Chen has no doubt, if it is an ordinary weapon, in the hands of the people, they can't make any harm to themselves. Even the outer layer of his body is not punctured. Of course, this is just the feeling of Jian Chen, he will not try to do this for stupidity. In the past year, Jian Chen's body has developed rapidly at an incredible speed. At the age of 2, he is almost 1 meter tall and looks like a 2-year-old child. Is a child of 5 or 6 years old. This scene makes everyone in Changyang House feel very amazed. Almost everyone has very high expectations for Jian Chen. I hope he is really a talented genius, but all this must wait for him 3 years old. Only then can I confirm. For all of this, Jian Chen felt very helpless. He didn't understand whether his body was so fast because he had cultivated the method of smelting the body in the Ziqing sword code. Because he had not touched the purple at this age in his previous life. Qing Jindian. When Jian Chen went to the dining hall with his mother by Yuntian to eat dinner, he still habitually locked himself in the room, locked the door, knees on the bed, hands on his knees, eyes closed, with 5 hearts in the sky. However, at this time, Jian Chen did not practice, but was thinking. He has been in this world for 2 years. In the past 2 years, Jian Chen did not step out of Changyang, and most of the time was in the whole day. He has spent a lot of time in the room. So far, he knows too little about the world. It can be said that except for Changyang, he simply doesn't know what kind of world it is, even what it's outside. He is also very clear in his heart. He is now only a 2-year-old child in his eyes. A 2-year-old child is usually happy in the arms of his parents. He can't touch this at all. Aspects of things. After thinking about it in bed, Jian Chen finally decided to wait until tomorrow, and then asked his mother. He felt that it was necessary to know what kind of world the world is. After thinking about this, Jian Chen slowly opened his eyes and got out of bed. Tonight, he did not practice sitting on the bed as usual, but stood straight in the center of the room, slightly closed. In the brain of Jian Chen, a very mysterious pace gradually emerged. Then, a picture suddenly appeared in the brain of Jian Chen. The picture was like a continuous flow of movies. I saw one wearing white. The robes and the young people who bear the long swords are walking fast on the ground. The speed of the young people is very fast. If they are ordinary people, I am afraid that the young people's body shape cannot be seen because of the speed of the young people. It was too fast, although it only moved in a small space, but behind him he faintly dragged a series of phantoms. This young man is the predecessor of Jian Chen, and this set of steps is also recorded in the Ziqing sword code, very mysterious. When the moonlight in the sky shone through the cracks in the window, suddenly, the sword dust standing in the center of the room suddenly opened his eyes. At this moment, he finally moved, only to see his legs at an incredible speed. Quickly sliding, almost a phantom has formed, and if you want to keep your legs at such a high speed, even some people who have used it can never do this. The legs of Jian Chen are stepping on the ground with a mysterious and regular trajectory. With the high-speed movement of the pace, the body with his body is also fast in the room at a very fast speed. The speed was already blowing a whirlwind in the room. However, this scene did not last long, and Jian Chen quickly stopped. At this moment, his face was already a little white, slightly gasping, and his feet could not help but tremble slightly. Jian Chen slowly walked to the window and sat down, bent down, holding his legs with both hands. Stepping on the mysterious pace lasted for a little while. Jian Chen's legs were extremely soft, and I felt that I could not afford the slightest strength. Jian Chen shook his head helplessly. No matter what martial arts he practiced, he must first practice a good bone. This sentence is true, and the higher the martial arts, the higher the requirements, the more he just stepped out. The set of steps, if there is not a strong body and strong instinct support, cannot last long. After all, an ordinary flesh can not only play so fast, and once the speed of movement exceeds the physical body, the limit will cause some damage to your body. It is not that easy to practice a high level of skill. Sitting on the edge of the bed, the legs will be raised. After the legs return to normal, the sword dust will sit on the bed with the knees and enter the state of absorbing the aura of the heavens and the earth. The night passed by, and in the twinkling of an eye, the sky was already bright, and at this time, a voice came in from the door of Jian Chen. For young masters, Dawn, it's time to get up. Listening to the voice is obviously the voice of a girl. The sound of the sword sitting on the bed slowly opened his eyes and said in a childish voice, I know, Safflower sister, I am already up. Speaking, Jian Chen got up and got out of bed. At the same time, the door was opened. I saw two young girls, who were about 18 years old, coming in from outside the door. Both of them had a large tray in their hands, one of which had a basin on it. A brand new towel was placed neatly next to the basin, which was the furniture used for washing the face, while the tray on the other hand was placed with some utensils for brushing the teeth. Chaotic Sword God Chapter 5, Tianyuan Continental. Chapter 5 Tianyuan Continental. Saffron sister, Dongmei's sister, it is really hard for you. Looking at two young girls who are only about 18 years old, Jian Chen said softly. These two girls are the rings in the Changyang government. They are the ones who specialize in the daily affairs of Jian Chen. After the automatic sword dust alone lives in a room, his mother by Yuntian specially sent these two rings to serve. Jian Chen. After listening to the words of Jian Chen, the two rings smiled sweetly, and one of them said, For young masters, you must not be so polite. As a ring, these are all we should do. Yeah, for young masters, you can't say this in the future. If the general manager hears you, we will be very severely punished. Another ring said. Jian Chen smiled slightly and said, Do not worry, I will not say this in front of outsiders. Jian Chen also understands very well that the concept of the ranks in Changyang House is very strong, as the four young masters in the Changyang House. If this sentence is by outsiders, I heard it, and said that these two rings will really be subject to some punishment. After washing, Jian Chen left his room and walked to his mother's room in Baiyunshan as usual. His mother's room was not far from his room, only a short distance of more than 20 meters. Just entering the door, Jian Chen saw the mother who was dressing up at the dressing table, and there were two rings waiting on the side. Xiang'er, how come so early today? As soon as I saw the sword dust, Baiyunshan's face showed a soft smile, and the eyes of Jian Chen were full of love. Looking at the love of Baiyunshan eyes, the heart of Jian Chen is completely softened. In the past life, Jian Chen lost his parents from childhood, and he did not know what is called maternal love. He never experienced it, but since he came here however, he really felt the power of maternal love. At the same time, in the heart of Jian Chen, some faintly cherished this hard-won maternal love. Jian Chen came to Bian Tian, and reached out and touched his stomach. He smiled embarrassedly and said, The child is hungry. After the exercise last night, the stomach of Jian Chen is really hungry. It is. Bian Tian reached out and touched the head of Jian Chen. He smiled and said, When I will go to the dining hall with my mother. Yeah. Jian Chen nodded slightly, his face showed a satisfying look, but he was very happy to enjoy the mother's caring heart. After a pause, Jian Chen shouted again, Mother. Bian Tianmu lightly looked at the sword dust, softly said, Xiang'er, if you have anything, just say it. Jian Chen hesitated, sorted out the ideas in the lower brain, and then looked at Baiyunshan and said, Mother, can you tell the child what kind of world is outside? After listening to this, Bai Yunshan clearly squatted and immediately said, "Xiang'er, are you interested in the outside world?" "Baby is just curious," said Jian Chen. Bai Yunshan smiled slightly and said, "Xiang'er, the world outside is very vast, and it is very complicated. It is not clear in a few words. If you want to know what kind of world is outside, then it is better going to the library to read some books." Said here, Bai Yunshan looked helpless, said, "But Xiang children do not know the words, even if you go to the library, you don't know the words written on the book. Mother, why don't you send someone to teach me literacy?" Jian Chen's tone was a little dissatisfied. When Bai Yuntian screamed and said, "Xiang heir, you are only 2 years old now, the 2-year-old child will start to read, this thing has never been heard, and on our Tianyuan continent. There has never been such a thing. Generally speaking, even the children who started literacy at the earliest have to wait until they are 4 or 5 years old." The sword thus stunned, and then said, "Mother, the baby wants to literate now, then can you find someone to teach me?" After listening to this, Bai Yunshan suddenly stayed for a moment, and even with a smile of joy, said, "Xiang'er, literacy is a very hard thing, and it is very boring. We must know that there are so many words on our mainland. It's not a short time to finish. Are you sure you're going to start literacy now?" Jian Chen nodded affirmatively and said, "Yes." I got a positive reply from Jian Chen. The smile on Bai Yunshan's face was even more splendid. "I was happy, since it's Xiang's initiative, it's also very supportive for you." Bai Yunshan turned slightly. "Road, Small Willow. You will go to the most famous teaching book in the city of lore, please come to the house, let him teach me to be literate." "Yes, ma'am." The respectful demeanor of the circle that helped Bai Yunshan comb his hair. "Xiang'er, it's not too late, let's go to the dining hall, don't starve yourself." The day passed quickly. The next morning, the mother of the sword dust, Bai Yuntian, who came to him for the early days, came to the house and began to teach the knowledge of Jian Chen. Since then, all the time of Jian Chen during the day, almost all spent in serious literacy, because Jian Chen retains the memory of past lives, the spirit of the space is strong, so the knowledge of this new world is not difficult for Jian Chen. Especially, under the careful guidance of some people, it seems to be more relaxed, and he has a hard memory that is almost unforgettable, so the study text is progressing very fast, but it took only 3 months. I will fully understand the words that are common on the mainland. The speed of Jian Chen's learning of the text made the teacher fascinated. Then when his mother Bai Yuntian knew that Jian Chen had completely acquired the text in just 3 months, he could not believe it. In the end, I accepted this fact after personal test. After all, if I want to learn all the common words on the mainland, at least at the normal speed, it will take at least 1 or 2 years or more, and Jian Chen in just 3. In a month's time, the homework that others have completed in a year or 2 is completed. No genius-like mind is simply impossible to complete. This matter was quickly known by Jian Chen's father, Chang Yangba, who visited him in the room of Jian Chen. "Xiang'er, you have worked hard during this time. Let's relax now, and the father can give you a reward. As a hard earner of your hard work literacy these months, I don't know if you want to. What rewards are you?" Chang Yangba looked at Jian Chen with a smile and said softly. With such a genius son, his heart is also very proud, and naturally it is even more concerned about Jian Chen. After listening to this, Jian Chen's eyes lit up and he said without hesitation, "Hey, let's let the children go to the library to read some books. By the way, you can also increase some insights." Chen Jiangba's eyes lit up and looked at Jian Chen's eyes with a hint of gratification. He laughed and said, "Of course, there is no problem. Xiang'er, you have such a motivated heart, and the father is happy for you. Now I approve you can enter freely after the bookstore." "Thank you." Jian Chen's face also showed a happy smile, can enter the library, is also a happy thing for Jian Chen. After all, he gradually understood this time. The bookstore is not accessible to anyone who is casual. It must be a disciple of 6 years old or older to be eligible to enter. Of course, if it is approved by the owner it is not counted. Later, Chen Jiangba left the place with a warmth of the sword dust. When Chang Yangbai left, Jian Chen could not sit still. He immediately left the room and walked toward the library. After all, he came to him for 3 months. Efforts to literate, everything is just to be able to enter the library to read the books on the details of this world. Although there is some information about this world, Jian Chen can also ask his mother, but the books in the book are more detailed and more comprehensive, so Jian Chen will value these books so much. The position of the bookstore, Jian Chen, was already heard, just in a high tower in the backyard of the family. When Jian Chen stepped into the backyard, he immediately felt that a large number of masters were hidden around him, and his eyes were falling on his own body like snakes. Jian Chen stood upright and pretended to walk toward the tower in front of him. If people knew that he could feel the eyes of those who were hiding in the shadows, I would immediately introduce him a series of trouble. After all, his appearance today is only a 2-year-old child, and he does not understand the slightest martial arts. Although there are quite a few disciples in the Changyang government, there are very few people in this library, so in addition to seeing several guards responsible for standing guards, Jian Chen never saw other people. Soon after, he came to the martial art of the tower. Jian Chen stopped his footsteps and looked up slightly. He saw a very large plaque hanging on the gate of the tower. The dragon and the phoenix danced with 3 large characters, book collection. In front of the entrance door, there are 2 guards guarding, but Jian Chen can see at a glance that these guards have weak strength. Jian Chen went straight to the front door of the tower. When he opened the door, he walked straight in. The 2 guards who stood guard at the door did not have any blockage. They seemed to be a wood carving. They stood still and motionless. Even when I saw Jian Chen, I didn't even say hello. When the sword dust entered the tower, it was a long corridor. At the moment it was clear during the day and the sun was shining, but it was dark in the corridor, and on the walls on both sides of the corridor, every distance would linger. A fist-sized night pearl is used to provide the light here. This corridor is very long. It is estimated that the entire tower is divided into 2 areas. When the sword dust came to the end of the corridor, it met 2 ramps. For young masters, the owner has orders, you have the right to enter the left area. At this moment, an old voice sounded. With the voice, a tall figure gradually emerged in the darkness. I heard the sound, the meaning of the sword dust turned around, although the light here is very dim, but it is very clear to see the person in the darkness. I saw that it is a very old man, full of white hair and an old face is full of wrinkles, wearing a grey robes of old color, and a pair of eyes are also plain, giving people the feeling is a very ordinary old man. Although the old man looks very ordinary in any way, Jian Chen does not dare to look down on the old man. He can clearly feel that this old man is a very powerful master, and he still came to this world. Since then, the strongest person he has ever seen, even his father, Chen Jiangba, is far from being comparable to the old man in front of him. Chaotic Sword God Chapter 6, Holy Test. Chapter 6 Holy Test. Although Jian Chen found the strength of the old man, he did not show any expression on his face. He nodded silently, and whispered, then passed by the old man and walked toward the corridor on the left. When it came to the end of the corridor, the light in front of Jian Chen's eyes suddenly turned bright. He had already arrived in a very wide room. The light here was very bright, and there was no difference compared with the white outside. In this room, there are a lot of bookshelves arranged neatly, and there are a lot of books on them. If the books in the whole room are added up, it is estimated that there are at least 1,000 books. Jian Chen looked up at the ceiling slightly, because he knew that the light here was so bright, it was the credit of the ceiling. The ceiling of the roof did not know what material was made, but it could emit a soft glare. Although the light is strong, it is not glaring. Although very curious about the ceiling, Jian Chen did not waste time on this, went straight to a bookshelf, carefully selected a few, and finally took out a book that he needs most now. This book clearly records the description of the whole continent. The books are not thick. The sword dust has been read in 2 or 3 hours. At the same time, the mind has finally got some general understanding of this strange world. This continent is called the land of the Tianyuan continent. The mainland is very vast. There are countless large and small countries. In the territory of these countries, there are various cities of different sizes. The largest of these cities is called the super city. The area of each super main city is very large, and the supreme ruler of these cities is a city owner, with millions or even tens of millions of city guards. However, on the entire Tianyuan continent, there are only 7 supermaster cities, which are occupied by the 3 most powerful empire. The Karal Empire and the Farista Empire respectively control 2 supermaster cities, and the last sacred empire it is also the master of 3 supermasters. Under the supermain city, the second is Wangqing, but the area of Wangqing is much smaller than that of the supermain city. The number is much higher than that of the supermain city. There is at least 1 king city in almost every kingdom. There are millions of city guards, and under the king's city is a first-class city. It has 800,000 city-level military, 2-tier cities, 400,000 city-level military, 3-tier cities, and 200,000 city-level military, and 3-tier cities. Below is the town. The town has 100,000 city guards. Under the town is a village of different sizes. The guards are all composed of the village name, but the total number is less than 50,000, with the strength and equipment are also a lot worse. Everyone on the Tianyuan continent is a force of cultivation called the power of the Holy Spirit. When the power of the Holy Spirit in their bodies reaches the 10th level, they will condense into a sacred soldier in the body according to the Master's thoughts. The shape of the sacred soldier is very strange, and the specific shape is completely formed according to the Master's thought. Since the sacred soldiers are completely condensed by the power of the Holy Spirit in the individual, the sacred soldiers are formed in spirit and are connected with the Master. Some talented people, when the sacred gang is just condensed, will bring some attributes. These are the forces of earth, wind, water, fire, light, and darkness, among which light, the dark 2 elements are very rare and very powerful. The light elements have a very powerful healing power, and those who have the light elements of the sacred soldiers have the title of undead on the Tianyuan continent, because once they are injured in battle, they will quickly recover by healing ability. In the same level of combat, if it is not a hit, it will be difficult to kill them. The dark elements are very corrosive, not only very troublesome, but also the most difficult one, especially in the dark. They are coming, no trace, there is a dark night on the mainland. The title of the king, the night, is their world. The other 4 attributes also have their corresponding abilities. The size of the ability is determined according to your own strength. Of course, on the Tianyuan continent, there are no ones in the sacred possession of attributes. More people are not sacred. Any attribute, and in the same level of battle, people with attributes are often much more powerful than people without attributes. The sacred soldier is the most powerful weapon for everyone. When fighting, the sacred soldier can be summoned from the body in an instant to assist the master to fight and let the master play the super strength. At the same time, the sacred soldier and the master are also related to life. If the soldier is traumatized, it will cause some damage to the owner. If the sacred soldier is broken, the owner will be dealt a fatal blow. The situation is serious and may even die. However, the sacred soldiers are very hard, unless the strength is stronger than the number of patriarchs, otherwise, it will not cause any harm to the sacred soldiers. After the formation of the sacred soldiers, the future cultivation methods also enhance the strength of the sage by absorbing the aura between the heavens and the earth to make the sages stronger. After the formation of the holy soldiers, it became a sage, and the strength of the saints on the Tianyuan continent was also divided into 9 levels, namely, the saint, the great saint, the holy teacher, the great saint, the earth holy division, sky master, holy king, holy emperor, holy emperor. Each level is divided into 3 small levels, which are pre-dash, mid-dash, and post-stage. On the Tianyuan continent, there is a huge mountain range that almost traverses the entire continent. This mountain is called the Warcraft Mountains. There are endless warcraft in it, but the deeper it is, the stronger the strength of warcraft. The level of warcraft is divided into 9 levels. The level of World of Warcraft is equivalent to the human saint. The strength of the second level of Warcraft is equivalent to the human saint, so that the 8 levels of Warcraft are equivalent to the human emperor. And the 9-level Warcraft is equivalent to the human emperor. At the same time, there is a very popular occupation on the Tianyuan continent, that is, mercenaries. According to the books, there are many mercenaries on the Tianyuan continent, almost all over the mainland. These mercenaries usually rely on various kinds of mercenaries. Different missions to get money, but more mercenaries are hunting Warcraft in the Warcraft Mountains, and gain magic money to make money. Although the danger is very large, the profit is very rich, because the magic core is very expensive on the Tianyuan continent, and the more advanced the magic core, the more expensive the price, some high-level magic core even at all not measured by money. The magic core is almost a very important item for everyone on the Tianyuan continent. The magic core contains very pure and powerful energy. This energy can be directly absorbed, thus rapidly enhancing its own strength, and it is better than absorbing the heaven and earth. It's going on several times, but using the magic core to cultivate, this is not something that ordinary people can afford. In addition to these, Jian Chen also understands from the book, the world is very cruel, there are almost everywhere fighting here, more sinister than the rivers and lakes where he lived in the past. If there is no strong strength, in the outside world it's hard to survive. Moreover, this continent is also cultivated by everyone. However, many people are of a mediocre qualification. In the end of their lives, they cannot cultivate the sanctity of the body to the 10th floor, thus condensing the sacred soldiers in the body. There is no rely on mountains, and they are often at the lowest level of the Tianyuan continent. It is equivalent to the peasants in the poor township. After reading these materials, Jian Chen has some understanding of this strange world, the sacred forces, the power of elements, world of warcraft, magic, mercenary, all of which are so fresh for Jian Chen. At the same time, Jian Chen's heart began to smash, and that is the yearning for the outside world. He now wants to leave Changyang House immediately, go outside and feel some outside world style. However, Jian Chen knows that at least in the past few years, he is unlikely to achieve this wish, let alone his parents will not let his children who are not even 3 years old go out. I am afraid that even if he really went out, there is no ability to protect yourself. In the next period of time, Jian Chen practiced harder. In addition to eating and some daily activities, the rest of the time almost shut himself in the room to practice, and now his first stage of Ziqing swords has not completed the basic part, so the gas of heaven and earth that he inhaled into the body is all integrated into every cell in his body, the internal organs and the limbs, which essentially strengthens every part of the body. When his flesh reaches the strength of these worlds, he will not be able to form any strengthening effect. Jian Chen will take the second step and formally cultivate the infuriating spirit. So far, Jian Chen has a far stronger than ordinary people. Outside the body, Dan Tianzhong is empty, and there is no point in it. In the past life, Jian Chen practiced Ziqing swordsman in the step of sculpt in only 1 year to complete, and in this world, the atmosphere of the world is much stronger than his previous life, so now he spent 2 the time of the year has not yet been completed, but the strength of the body is definitely much stronger than that of his previous life. For Jian Chen to hide in his room all day, his parents did not reveal the strange look, because every child in the Changyang government who just turned 2 years old, parents will pass on their basics law, then let them practice for 1 year, and when they are 3 years old, they will conduct a test of the Holy Spirit to assess their potential and qualifications. Similarly, when Jian Chen was just 2 years old, his mother Bai Yuntian also uttered a basic method of giving him a pass, but for this method of venting, Jian Chen glanced in the brain directly. He was left behind, because this thing for him, non-condensation, is a toy that an adult plays with a child. Therefore, Jian Chen kept shutting himself in the room all day, and the outsiders would think that Jian Chen was practicing the peace of the law, and he was not confused. Early the next morning, Jian Chen ended his cultivation for 1 night. Today is his special day, because today is his 3-year-old birthday. At the same time, today he will carry every child who is 3 years old on Tianyuan. A holy test must be conducted. After going to the dining hall to eat breakfast with her mother Bai Yuntian, Jian Chen walked toward the main hall of Changyang House under the leadership of her mother. The area of Changyang Prefecture is very large. The area where Jian Chen lives is only a small courtyard in Changyang Prefecture. Walking on the road, Jian Chen keeps looking at Changyang House. In the past 3 years, most of the time, Jian Chen worked hard in the room and rarely visited Changyang. In Changyang Prefecture, a team of armored escorts patrolled in every area, and a pair of sly eyes kept glanced back and forth in some hidden places. Although it was daytime, they still did not relax. When Jian Chen passed through a wide-scale performance field, he was attracted by a young and screaming voice. I saw that dozens of children under the age of 10 were taught by a middle-aged man. Wu. Jian Chen knows clearly that these children are some of the disciples in the Changyang government. There are more than 1,000 people in the Changyang government. In addition to half of the family's guards and servants, the other half are almost members of the Changyang government. After passing through the military field, Jian Chen, under the leadership of his mother's Baiyunshan, finally came to the main hall of the central government of Changyang. Chaotic Sword God Chapter 7, Forgotten Genius. Chapter 7 Forgotten Genius. The hall is very vast, and the area inside is extremely huge. At this moment, there are more than a dozen people sitting in the hall, all of them are middle-aged men dressed in different styles. Baiyunshan walked straight to the front seat of a seat close to the main seat with a sword dust. If he wants to have a seat here, he must have a certain status. Although Jian Chen is the four sons of Changyang Prefecture, but now there is no place for him here, so Jian Chen and his mother Baiyuntian are sitting in the same seat. Jian Chen was very well behaved sitting next to his mother, Baiyunshan, waiting quietly and not talking. Soon, some people in the hall continued to walk in, and then found their position quietly. Even the 3 aunts of Jian Chen came in with their children. Hey, 4 brothers, today is the day when you carry out the test of the holy power. You must also strive to be angry. Don't let the second sister down. Changyang Mingyue, a lovely smile full of smiles, used against Jian Chen, said in a very light tone. Although the sound is very light, in this quiet hall, it is clear to everyone. Mingyue. The mother of Changyang Mingyue frowned at her, her voice sighing with a bit of blame. Changyang Mingyue smiled lightly, and spit out his tongue at the lovely dust of Jian Chen. He did not continue to talk. He sat quietly on his mother's side, and a pair of bright big eyes fluttered and flashed, constantly looking at the people in the hall. Soon, the people in the hall were full, and the eyes of everyone in the hall were swept over the sword dust from time to time. In the eyes, they all had a look of expectation. This time they gathered together, all because of today. It is the day when Jian Chen was 3 years old to carry out the test of the holy power. If you are an ordinary disciple, you will not be so high-spirited when you conduct the test of the holy power. However, Jian Chen's identity is different. It is the child of the owner of Changyang House, and coupled with the talents of others from childhood, almost Changyang everyone in the government has a very high expectation. Therefore, when Jian Chen conducts the test of the holy power, it is natural that these people who have some status in the Changyang government are very concerned. After all, how much achievements Jianyun has in the future, today's holy test will be a very important start. When everyone came to Qi, Jian Chen's father, Changyang Pa, came to the main hall and stepped on the throne of the position of the homeowner. Changyang's gaze stayed on the sword dust for a while, with a faint smile on his face, and then looked around for a week. After talking about the scene, Jian Chen's holy test began very quickly. Uncle, you have trouble rituals for the dog's test of the holy power. Changyang Tyrant said politely to an old man sitting next to him. The old man seems to be 60 or 70 years old. He is wearing a gray shirt and his white hair. His face is covered with wrinkles, but the eyes are stunned. The old man smiled slightly and said, "The homeowner is polite." He said. The old man got up and walked to the center of the main hall. He smiled and looked at Jian Chen. He said in a tone and awkwardness, "For young masters, please." Bian Tian looked lovingly at the sword dust sitting next to him, and the voice was soft, "Xianger, hey, go to uncle, let Dishu test the power in your body." "Yeah." Jian Chen gently whispered, very nicely left the seat, stepped on a small step to the old man called Dishu. Uncle Deer did not talk nonsense, slowly lifted his right hand. Then, a silver-white ring worn by Dishu on his right hand suddenly lit up with white light. Then, Uncle's right hand waved and only heard it. A slight vibration sounded from the ground, and then, on the ground that was originally empty, there was no sign of a white stone half a meter high. The white stone was obviously polished, rectangular, half a meter high. Both thickness and width are about 1 foot. Looking at this suddenly appeared white stone, Jian Chen rubbed his eyes. For this sudden appearance of white rock, it seems very strange. Then, Jian Chen's gaze moved to the uncle's right hand, staring straight at the one being Uncle Dai's silver-white ring on the middle finger. The brain quickly reveals a message that is seen in the book. The space ring is made of very special and rare materials. The ring has its own space. The space is large and small. The smallest one is only 1 meter cubic. The big one can even reach the cube of 100 meters. It can be stored freely. The object of life is a very expensive item on the Tianyuan continent, and ordinary people simply cannot own it. I noticed that Jian Chen looked at the space ring worn on his own hand. Uncle smiled slightly. Almost every person who saw him took out the holy stone of the test force from the space ring would steal. With such a look, for this kind of gaze, Uncle has no idea how many times he has seen it. For young masters, please put a hand on this holy stone. Uncle said with a smile. Xingshi is a special stone that can test the strength and attributes of the Holy Spirit in each individual body. It is widely spread on the Tianyuan continent. It is the only prop to test the strength of the individual. The result of the holy stone test is replaced by the color of the light. Red, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, purple. The red is the division of strength below the saints, the orange represents the saints, the yellow is the strength of the great saints, and the class is pushed, the blue is the earthly sage, the purple is the sky sage, as for the sky sage the holy king, the holy emperor, the strongest of the holy emperor, their strength is not tested by the holy stone. When Jian Chen regained his gaze, extended a hand and placed it on this white stone called holy stone. At this moment, everyone's eyes in the hall are gathered on the white sacred stone. Everyone can't help but look forward to it. I don't know how much potential there is in the talented sword dust from an early age. When the hand of Jian Chen was placed on the holy stone, Uncle also gave birth to a holy stone on the holy stone, which was started by a special method. Suddenly, Jian Chen only felt a kind of quirky energy flowing from the holy stone and entered the body along his own arm. This strange energy is very gentle. After swimming around in his body, he will follow it again. Return your own arm to the holy stone. Uncle's old eyes are closely watching the changes of the holy stone, but after a while, the holy stone is still the same, and there has not been a slight change. How is this possible? Xingshi actually did not reflect it. Uncle could not help but whispered. The smile on his face gradually disappeared and became dignified, and in the eyes of Jian Chen, it was a very strange look, and it was a little faint. Noticing the expression on Uncle's face and the sacred stone that didn't move at all, the people in the hall seemed to realize what they were, and their faces couldn't help but change. Look at me, I look at you, everyone's eyes, with a look of suspicion, some people sighed a little and showed a trace of pity. The face of Changjiangba gradually became ugly, and by Yunshin, his face was slowly pale, and his face was full of unbelievable looks. Uncle took a deep breath and he was unbelievable about this result. He immediately started the appreciation again, but the result was still the same. The holy stone did not react at all. For this result, Uncle Dear is also unbelievable. The 4 young masters who were called geniuses from an early age are actually a waste person who cannot be cultivated. Uncle was very disappointed inside, his eyes looked at the very calm sword dust, and then turned and said to Changyang Pa, Home, after testing, has now concluded that the 4 young masters cannot cultivate the holy power. When I heard this announcement, Bai Yunshin's face had become pale and pale, without a trace of blood, staring at Jian Chen, and muttered in his mouth, Impossible, impossible, how could Xiang'er be a waste person? After muttering a few words, Bai Yunshin only felt dizzy, and at the end of the first glimpse, he fell to the chair and fainted. For a son who has always been called a genius, he was actually a waste person. This result is obviously unacceptable to her. No mother can accept such a thing, let alone live in a large family. Upon hearing this result, everyone in the hall sighed helplessly. The eyes of Jian Chen were filled with regret and disappointment. The 3 ants of Jian Chen's Yufengyan and the big ant were exquisite. I was relieved, and I was filled with gloating in the eyes of Jian Chen and Biyun Tianmuzi. Ah, 4 sisters, what's wrong with you, 4 sisters, you wake up, 4 sisters, you wake up. At this time, sitting on the side of Bai Yunshin, the white jade cream found a coma in the past, Bai Yunshin, in shouting anxiously. Hearing the shout of Bai Yushuang, Changyang suddenly found the blue sky in the past, and sighed slightly. Chen Jiangba waved his hand and said, "Froser, help Yuner to rest." Jian Chen also quickly came to Bai Yunchen. Under the condition that everyone did not pay attention, the right hand had been gently pressed on Bai Yunchen's wrist. After testing the pulsation of Bai Yunchen, Jian Chen had confirmed Bai Yuntian does not have much problem. Jian Chen looked at the people in the lobby and the disappointed father. He felt very helpless in his heart and secretly sighed. Then Jian Chen followed the white jade cream holding his mother and came out of the hall. Oh! But after Jian Chen left, Changyang Pai sighed heavily, his face looked disappointing. He originally had very high expectations for his fourth son, but he didn't want to expect more. The disappointment was also greater. In the end, it was actually the result. His fourth son, Changyang Xiangtian, was actually a waste man who could not cultivate. Homeowners, don't be too concerned about it. Although the four young masters can't practice, they may have very talented talents in other areas. A middle-aged man sitting in the room comforted. Chen Jiangba waved his hand and said with amazement, "You should not mention this matter again. Everyone is scattered." When the words were finished, Changyang Pai got up and left here. Although he understands that his fourth son may have outstanding talents in other aspects, the most important thing in the world is force. After all, force is the foundation of everything. Chengjiangfu Sigongzi Changyang Xiangtian is a practice of cultivating waste people. It was quickly spread to every corner of Changyang House. For this matter, some people are happy and sad, but what is certain is that Changyang Xiangtian, the status in Changyang Prefecture, will definitely drop rapidly. In a large room, Jian Chen quietly sat on the edge of the bed, calming his face, low head, and did not know what he was thinking, and his mother Bai Yuntian still did not wake up, his eyes were closed. Lying in bed. In addition to Jian Chen and his mother and several hoes in the room, his three aunts Bai Yushuang and the second sister Changyang Mingyue are also here. Chaotic Sword God Chapter 8, Misfortune. Chapter 8 Mistakes. Looking at the sword dust that looked down, Changyang Mingyue's big eyes smashed, then went to the side of Jian Chen and said, "For brothers, you should not be too upset. If someone bullies you later, you will tell your sister, 'Sister, I will give you a meal for you.'" Changyang Mingyue thought that Jian Chen was sad because he could not cultivate the holy power. After listening to this, Jian Chen's face could not help but reveal a smile. He looked up at Changyang Mingyue and said, "Do not worry, second sister, I am not so bullied." Only Jian Chen himself understands that he is not unable to cultivate the holy power here, but that he has absorbed all the absorbed forces of the Holy Spirit into the flesh for the sake of smelting, so that his body is still empty now, and there is no point in Dantian. Holy power, otherwise, today's test results will definitely not be the case. Unfortunately, in these cases, Jian Chen is really unable to say it. Once he said it, he could not explain these things. He would not say anything about the Ziqing sword code. Otherwise, I am afraid this work. The origin of the law will become a big problem. Although Jian Chen understands that this situation will definitely lower his position in Changyang Prefecture, he does not care about this, and there is still some expectation in the heart. Once things really develop into this, then he will, it's no doubt easier to leave Changyang. If you are really put on a genius title, I am afraid that if you want to leave Changyang House to go outside, it will not be so easy. At least, before their strength is not recognized by them, they will never let themselves go. Go out. Xianger. Xianger. The soft call was uploaded from the bed. At this time, the mother of Jian Chen finally woke up. As soon as I heard the sound, the spirit of Jian Chen rose and immediately turned to come to Bai Yunchen. "Mother, baby is here, you are fine." Biyun Tianmu looked at Jian Chen in a complicated way and sighed. "Yes, it's okay, Xianger ah." Bai Yunchen said with a sigh of relief, looking at Jian Chen's eyes is very complicated. There are sorrows, sadness, and a trace of pain. For sisters, don't bother too much. Xiangtian is very smart from an early age. Although it is a great regret to be unable to cultivate the power of the Holy Spirit, in my opinion, Xiangtian is not so simple. His future achievements are still, there is no limit. After all, he has a clever mind that no other child has. The white jade cream standing on the side came to the bed and said comfortably. Bai Yunchen nodded slightly and said, I also understand this truth. As you look at the sword dust, a white palm is gently stroking the head of Jian Chen, and softly said, Xiang'er, you don't need to use it. Sad, your second aunt is right. Although you can't cultivate the holy power, you have a clever mind. In other places, you may have very good achievements. After listening to this, Jian Chen's face showed a hint of hesitation. Looking at his mother, Jian Chen's heart was also very uncomfortable. At this moment, he really wanted to tell his mother the truth of the matter and say that it's not that you can't cultivate the power of the Holy Spirit, but in the end, Jian Chen still resisted and said, Mother, don't worry, the baby won't let you down. For this hard-won maternal love, Jian Chen is very cherished. On this day, Jian Chen stayed with his mother all day in the room until the night. During the period, Changyang Pa also came to visit Bai Yunchen, but soon left, and for Jian Chen, Changyang the performance of the tyrant today is very different from that of the past. His attitude toward the sword dust has gradually cooled down. All this, Jian Chen is in his eyes. In a twinkling of an eye, it has been 4 years since the test of the Jian Chen Xingli. During this period, when Jian Chen was fine, all of them were locked up in the room to practice. The time of cultivation was longer than before, sometimes even I can't see Jian Chen out of the house. In the past 4 years, the position of Jian Chen in the Changyang government has dropped a lot. Even Changyang Pa has become cold to him. In the past 4 years, he has never taken the initiative to look at him once. His mother Bai Yuntian almost visited Jian Chen every day, and her love for Jian Chen did not change. In the early morning of the next day, the sword dust sitting on the bed and knees slowly opened his eyes and ended the cultivation of one night. Then he saw him slightly revealing his hands and palms, and gradually appeared a group of white light, and then the sword dust volley a beautiful turnover from the bed, steadily landed on the ground, and both hands were inserted into the ground at the same time. Just listening to a slight noise, Jian Chen's small hands are as hard as 2 small steel plates, easily on the very hard floor on the ground, only the part above the palm is outside. Looking at his masterpiece, Jian Chen's face showed a smile of joy. As soon as he was half a year away from the test of Jian Chen's holy force, he completed the basic part of the first layer of practice of Ziqing Jindian. Formally began to cultivate the power of the Holy Spirit. Because it is not necessary to use the absorbed power of the Holy Spirit to sculpt, the practice of Jian Chen is very fast. It took only a few years to achieve very great results. Nowadays, with the power of the Holy Spirit in the body, the sword dust can be inserted into the ordinary stone slab with both hands, and it is very easy. In the early morning, Jian Chen walked out of the door and walked alone in the Changyang house. However, the patrol guards in the Fuzhong team looked at Jian Chen's eyes full of weirdness, ridicule, disdain, and regret. Jian Chen, the practice of cultivating the waste is no longer a secret thing in the Changyang government. Now, even some patrolling guards in the Changyang government have seen some changes in the eyes of Jian Chen. Jian Chen turned a blind eye to these. At this time, his stomach couldn't help but starve. He began to scream, and Jian Chen reached out and wiped his stomach. He sighed secretly and walked toward the kitchen. He has not been dining with his mother for a long time. During this time, every morning breakfast, Jian Chen went to the kitchen to eat. Only at noon and evening, he will go with his mother Bai Yuntian. The dining hall dine with several aunts. When Jian Chen came to the kitchen, hundreds of folks were busy inside, and the kitchen was so smoky. Because of the stove, staying inside was like being in a steaming steamer. Hey! This is not the 4 young masters. How did the 4 young masters come to our kitchen again? Hey, this kitchen is the place where we are staying. The 4 young masters, your delicate body, how can you come to this place? Seeing Jian Chen, a man in his 20s began to laugh, and the weird tone made everyone laugh at the ridiculous meaning of the speech. When the voice of this person fell, there was a buddy who immediately said, if I guess that it is correct, the 4 young masters must come to the kitchen to get the hoe, but it is strange, why the 4 young masters do not go to the dining hall and the owner. To dine together, but to grieve yourself, actually come to the kitchen to get the hoe, this gimmick is all the things we eat and the guards in the government. The speaker is about 30 years old. Young people, staring at the sword dust. After listening to the words of the two of them, the other folks in the kitchen looked at them with a look at the drama. The two men were behind the big guys, and the man in his 20s was the big aunt of Jian Chen. That is, the first lady of Changjiangba's exquisite introduction was introduced. I heard that Ling Long also touched the side of relatives, but because she had nothing to bear, she only went to work in the kitchen. As for the 30-year-old youth who spoke later, his brother was the captain of the guard of Changyang Prefecture. Listening to the ridiculous words of the two men, Jian Chen's brows were lightly wrinkled, and an anger flashed in his eyes, but he was finally held back by him and went straight to a huge steamer, just as he just reached out to uncover the steamer. When I opened the lid, I didn't want to take a big step and take the big steamer and move away. I have to hand over the hose in the steamer to the guards. The brothers who are guarding in the Changyang government have not yet had breakfast. Then the guy walked outside with a steamer. In the end, I muttered to myself, it is a pity that the four ladies actually gave birth to such a useless waste son. After listening to this, Jian Chen's body was slightly stiff. At this moment, the anger in his heart finally broke out. He didn't say a word, then he swayed slightly and his feet slammed on the ground at an extremely fast speed. After coming to the man who was holding the steamer, he punched directly behind the guy. Bump! Unprepared, the man with the steamer was directly thrown to the ground by the fist of Jian Chen, and the steamer he was holding in his hand fell to the ground, suddenly, one by one. The rounded fell from the inside and rolled on the ground and rolled around. Sudden changes caused everyone in the kitchen to squat. Watching the sudden change of a position of the sword dust, everyone in the kitchen could not believe it. They did not see how the sword dust ran over, and more, what makes them unbelievable is that only the 7-year-old four young masters actually fell into the ground with a fist of a 30-year-old adult, even though the latter held a big steamer in his hand. But this scene was in a group. In the eyes of the buddy, I still feel incredible. Ha ha ha, Chiu Air brother, you are so surprised to me, so you are also a master of the Holy Spirit to reach the 3rd floor, actually fell to the ground by a child with a fist. You will not be in the woman last night. The stomach has consumed too much effort, and it is so weak. Looking at the man who fell on the ground, the young man in his 20s who had previously laughed at Jian Chen could not help but laugh. After listening to this, the guy named Chiu Air climbed up from the ground, staring at Jian Chen with anger in his eyes, and fell to the ground by a 7-year-old child with a fist. Especially this child is still a waste man who cannot cultivate the holy power. This is a shameful shame for him. After all, although he is not a saint who has already condensed the holy soldiers, he is also a 3-tiered person who achieves the power of the Holy Spirit. The flame of anger stunned his mind. Now Chiu Air seems to have forgotten that Jian Chen is the identity of the 4 young masters of Changyang Prefecture. He screamed and quickly came to the front of Jian Chen, directly hitting the chest of Jian Chen with a fist. Looking at the fists hit by Chiu Air, the face of Jian Chen's face showed a disdainful look. This punch was a flaw in his view. Immediately, Jian Chen's body tilted slightly and moved a little step to the side, just to escape. The fists hit by Chiu Air, then jumped, and the right leg quickly crossed a beautiful trajectory in the air, kicking on the nose of Chiu Air. What? Chiu Air made a pig-like scream, his hands immediately licked his nose, and there was faint blood flowing along his fingers. This leg sword dust did not leave his hand and kicked the nose of Chiu Air directly. The severe pain has made Chiu's face a little white. Chaotic Sword God Chapter 9, Strength Exposure. Chapter 9 Strength Exposure. Chiu's eyes were full of anger and looked at Jian Chen. The gaze was like a fierce beast, as if to swallow the dust of the sword. You little bastard, I must teach you a good lesson today. Chiu Air's angry roar, 2 steps out of the sword dust, kicked out quickly and kicked directly toward Jian Chen's head. The kicking of the leg is very fast. If you are kicked in the middle of your head, it will definitely cause ordinary people to suffer no small damage. If you are kicking on an ordinary child, it will definitely cause fatal injury. Feeling the strength of Chiu's leg, the young man in his 20s who had previously laughed at Jian Chen suddenly changed his face and became pale. He shouted loudly, Chiu urge, stop. Jian Chen is good. It is also the 4 young masters of Changyang Prefecture. The child of the owner of Changyang House, although it is a waste person who cannot cultivate the power of the Holy Spirit, is not subject to the weight of the family. But after all, the identity is placed there, ridiculing 1 or 2 sentences is nothing, but once they are right the 4 young masters of Changyang Prefecture started to work, and they would definitely be severely punished. Even if they were supported by the 2 men behind, they could not change anything. I found that the strength of Chiu Er's leg was slightly changed. The face of the sword dust changed slightly. The eyes flashed a trace of cold, and then the body was slightly sighed, easily avoiding the kick of Chiu Tu, while the sword dust did not retreat. Quickly approaching the front of Chiu Er, with one arm stuck on the thigh that Chiu Er had not recovered, the other hand carried the thigh of the other leg of Chiu Er, and then sighed low, sinking force, mobilize all the power of the Holy Spirit in the body, and finally with the help of the weak body, the hard-boiled body of the Chiu Tu feet more than 100 kilograms. Holding the body of Chiu Er, Jian Chen did not give Chiu Tu resistance time, and his feet stepped out again and again, running a few steps on the ground, and by the momentum of the forward, he threw out Chiu Tu directly. Chiu Er's body flew in the air for a distance of 5 meters, and finally fell to a large table dedicated to cutting vegetables. Coincidentally, the position where Chiu Er fell, there is a piece of steel underneath. The thorn is like a strange tool like a hedgehog. Chiu Er's body was just pressed against the strange tool used in this kitchen. The steel thorn that was just 1 inch long was easily penetrated into his body. Suddenly, Chiu Er once again made a pig-like scream. His voice, severe pain, and his muscles are distorted. All the buddies in the kitchen have become dull, and their eyes are full of incredulity. A 7-year-old child can not only resist the weight of more than 100 pounds of Chiu, but also has the power of 3 layers of holy power. Chiu Er defeated. If this is said to go out, I am afraid that no one in Changyang will believe it. Jian Chen's eyes looked cold and screaming at Chiu Er and another young man who laughed at him. He said nothing and left the kitchen directly. Even though was not taken. When I came outside, Jian Chen sighed secretly. I didn't expect that the 4 young masters of the Changyang house were actually bullying him. After abandoning the depressed feelings in his heart, Jian Chen took a small step and walked freely in Changyang house. Changyang house is very big. At least in the past few years, Jian Chen has never visited Changyang house. The scenery in Fuzhong is also very good. There are pavilions and pavilions everywhere. There are several small lakes, but in the garden, there are many exotic flowers and plants, and the scent is floating. As the 4 young masters of Changyang Prefecture, Jian Chen can wander around the Changyang house. On the way, Jian Chen finds that some important roads and buildings in the government are hidden in the inside. For these, the sword dust has long been eccentric. After all, he has also understood that Changyang is one of the 4 major families of Lore City in the past few years. He has a very high status in the first-class city of Lore City. Walking and walking, unconsciously, Jian Chen has come to a beautiful garden, and in an empty position, Jian Chen actually found his 3rd brother Chang Yanka holding a wooden axe in his hand. Practice martial arts, but that Changyang's appearance of wielding an axe, in the eyes of Jian Chen, the swordsman, seems to be in a messy way, without any move. Although Jian Chen is studying kendo, but I have seen many masters with axe and various weapons in the past life. Therefore, for all kinds of weapons, Jian Chen is also slightly familiar with 1 or 2, and Changyang is a mess. The action of cutting, so that Jian Chen feels quite speechless, where is the practice of martial arts? Just as the sword dust was about to turn away, Chang Yanka suddenly found the sword dust, and the movements on his hands suddenly stopped, and his face showed a slight smile. For brothers, come over, the 3rd brother will give you sugar to eat. Changyang looked at Jian Chen and shouted at him. After listening to the words of Changyang, Jian Chen almost carried a head to the ground, and secretly thought, this sentence is about to abduct a 3-year-old child. However, Jian Chen does not seem to realize that if it is tossed the experience of the past life, now I am not much bigger than the 3-year-old child. For Changyang, Jian Chen did not pay attention to it, and the footsteps kept going, and the head did not go back to other places. Seeing that Jian Chen went farther and farther, Chang Yanka showed a hint of anger on his face. He threw away the wooden axe in his hand and immediately chased it up and put the sword dust down. For brothers, I just told you that you didn't hear it. Chang Yanka stopped in front of the sword dust, and the tambourine said, and looked angry. Is there something? Calmly looking at Changjiang, Jian Chen asked a faint tone. The tone was a bit cold. For his third brother, Jian Chen has no good feelings at all. In the past 2 years, Changyangku always tried to bully the sword dust, and since the sword dust could not cultivate the power of the Holy Spirit, Changyangka the practice is getting more and more excessive. If it is not that Jian Chen rarely goes out, I am afraid that the number of swords and dusts in Changyang will only be more, but Changjiang has not succeeded once. In the dark, it is counterfeited by Jian Chen. Many times, this has made Changjiang's heart always worried, always looking for an opportunity to retaliate back. 3 brothers, accompany your third brother to practice martial arts together. Saying, Changyangku did not wait for Jian Chen to agree, just grabbed the arm of Jian Chen and forcibly pull it away from where he practiced martial arts. In the heart, Changjiang is excited, but he can't fight Jian Chen in intelligence, but he does not believe that he is not an opponent of Jian Chen in force. After all, his 4 brothers are a martial arts waste, and it is impossible. The cultivation of the power of the Holy Spirit, so in his view this non-condensation is a good opportunity to bully the sword dust. Soon, Jian Chen was forcibly pulled by Changyangku to the place where he practiced martial arts. Changyangka picked up the wooden axe that he had thrown aside from the ground, and looked at Jian Chen with a smirk, saying, "For brothers, are you ready? The third brother is going to start attacking." Looking at the feminine smile on Changjiang's face, Jian Chen's eyes showed a playful look, spread his hands and said, "3 brothers, you have weapons in your hands. Do you want me to play with you with empty hands?" After listening to this, Changyangku stunned and looked at the wooden axe that he was holding in his hand. He hesitated a little, then he threw his hand and threw the axe to Jian Chen. He said, "The 4 brothers took you. With an axe, the third brother is empty-handed to play with you. Although the axe is wooden, its weight is also 10 kilograms. An ordinary child who is only 10 years old is really difficult to lift." Changjiang, it was precisely this point that I took the axe to the sword dust and sincerely wanted to see him ugly. Jian Chen reached out and took the wooden axe and looked at it. The work of this axe was very rough, only the shape of an axe, and the axe blade did not open. Even if it was cut on the body, it would not cause damage. At most, it is a little pain. Seeing Jian Chen easily took advantage of the axe that had a weight of 10 pounds. Changyangka's eyes showed a hint of astonishment. This situation was unexpected. Jian Chen looked at Changyangku, and his face showed a faint smile. "3 brothers, this axe is still for you to use." Speaking, Jian Chen threw the axe to Changjiang. One hand caught the axe thrown by Jian Chen, and Changyangka asked in confusion, "For brothers, do you want to fight me without weapons?" Jian Chen chuckled and shook his head. Then he came to a small tree and broke a branch about 1 meter long. All the branches and leaves were removed, leaving only a bare branch back to its original position. "This is my weapon." Yang raised the branches in his hand, Jian Chen said with a chuckle. Changyangku glanced at the tiny branch of the chopsticks in the hands of Jian Chen. Not only was he not angry, but he showed a happy smile. In his opinion, it is more and more relaxed to defeat Jian Chen today. The bullying of this 4 brothers who have eaten a lot of dark losses, Changyangka, is a burst of excitement. Changjiang both slowly grasped the axe and said, "For brothers, then you are careful." The third brother attacked. He said, Changjiang immediately rushed forward and ran to the front of Jian Chen, holding his hands tightly. The axe, squatting to the body of Jian Chen. This wooden axe is not ruined at all, so Changjiang did not keep it at all, and the hand was very heavy. The sword dust stepped in a staggered way, easily escaped the Changjiang's axe, and then quickly stabbed the branches in his hand. At the moment when the branches were pierced, the momentum of Jian Chen suddenly changed, just like a sharp sword. The branches that are pierced in the hand are carrying a momentum of nowhere. At this moment, this ordinary branch is in the hands of Jian Chen, as if it has become a real sword. The branches of Jian Chen's hands pierced very fast. As soon as Changjiang came, he did not notice it. The branches had stopped in front of Changjiang's throat. "3 brothers, you lost." A look of sly look at the future of Changyang grams to recover the axe, Jian Chen said softly. Changjiang stayed staring at the branch in front of his throat, and he couldn't believe it. He didn't even see how the branch was stabbed. He only felt a flower in front of him. The root branches have already appeared in front of their throats. After staying there, Changjiang suddenly returned to the gods, reaching out and folding the branch in front of his throat into 2 paragraphs. He said with a dissatisfied voice, "No, this is not, the 4th brother, you play tricks." Jian Chen looked funny and looked at Chang Yanka, whose face was slightly reddened. He said in a weird tone, "3 brothers, I don't know where I am going. This. After listening to this, Changjiang scratched his head and scratched his head. He couldn't speak, and finally sighed with dissatisfaction. He said, "There was no such thing as that, we will come back again." Jian Chen sorted out the branch that had been broken by Chang Yangku, and smiled lightly, "Okay, we will come again." Speaking, Jian Chen slowly retreated to 5 meters away. Chaotic Sword God Chapter 10, Wait. Chapter 10 Wait. Chang Yangku held his axe tightly in his hands and looked at Jian Chen with a vigilant look. Because of the lesson, he never dared to look down on Jian Chen again, so this time he was particularly cautious. There was always a faint smile on the face of Jian Chen, and seeing Chang Yanka's gaze with a kind of banter that Changjiang still couldn't understand, said, "3 brothers, can you start the attack?" Chang Yangku tightened the axe in his hand. This time, he mobilized the power of the Holy Spirit in his body, and then rushed toward Jian Chen again. The speed was obviously much faster than before. Jian Chen waved his hand in a branch that was only half a meter long. The heart suddenly gave birth to a wonderful feeling, as if it had a very hidden connection with the tree branch, and at the same time in my mind, I couldn't help but emerge from my predecessor's life. When I was about to die, I realized the magical spirit of the gods and swords. In the end, under the control of his god, the sword in the hands of the gods leaped 100 meters away from the scene of piercing the solitary throat. Thinking of this, Jian Chen's thoughts moved, and the meaning of the branches controlled the branches in the hands of Changyang. Hey! As soon as the thought started, the branches that were held in the hands of Jian Chen seemed to be alive. They flew out from the hands of Jian Chen and spurred them at a very fast speed, and the entire branches were faintly wrapped in a faint white light. The sword skin, which is strong and full of sharpness, radiates from it. The speed of the branches is very fast. It is like lightning. As soon as the light flashes, it has already reached the chest of Changjiang. Feeling the speed of the branches flying and the swords on the branches, the sword dust was so horrified that immediately controlled the branches to stop, the speed of the branches and the sudden appearance of swords on the branches. He has no doubt that this tree branch can easily pierce the body of Changjiang. Even if it is not dead, it will be seriously injured. Once this happens, the sword dust will also be a great disaster. When the branch arrived at Changjiang's chest, it finally stopped. However, the front end of the branch pierced into the chest of Changjiang, but it was good that the piercing was not deep, but it was pierced into the skin. If the sword dust reaction is slower, then the body of Changjiang will be pierced by this branch, and the consequences will be unimaginable. The sword dust wiped the cold sweat on his forehead. His and the branches had a very hidden connection. Through the induction of the branches, Jian Chen knew that the branches only pierced the skin of Changjiang, and there was no serious problem. So that Jian Chen has relaxed a lot. The severe pain from the chest made Changyang's white fat face white and white. When he looked down at the blood on his chest, his face suddenly changed, and then, wow, burst into tears. The tears in my eyes flowed like a fountain. Blood, blood, bleed, wow, 4 brothers, you beat me, oh, mother, madam, I want to tell my mother to go, mother, 4 brothers beat me. This moment, Changjiang seems to have become a naughty child who loves to cry. He throws away the wooden axe in his hand and screams out toward the garden. After all, Changjiang is now a child who is less than 10 years old and is still growing up in the greenhouse. Looking at Changjiang, who gradually disappeared into the line of sight, Jian Chen shook his head helplessly and walked toward his residence. He understood in his heart that, next, I am afraid I will be severely criticized. What, Chang Bo, you won't be kidding me. In a study, Changyang House's owner, Yang Yangba, suddenly stood up from the chair, staring tightly at an old man standing opposite. Said in amazement. The old man is the steward of Changyang House. Chang Bo nodded affirmatively and said with a serious face, my homeowner, I didn't believe this thing, but there are dozens of people in the kitchen who see it clearly. The 4 young masters really work in a kitchen. The buddy was injured, and in the end, the weight of the man was more than 100 kilograms. He threw a distance of 5 meters and, most importantly, the man himself was a possessor. The strength of the 3-tiered power of the Holy Spirit. After listening to this, the surprised look in Changyang's eyes was even stronger, and the faintness was still unbelievable. Changbo looked at Changyang Pa, hesitated a little, and said again, "Home, I just received the news, the 4 young masters in the garden and the 3 young masters in the competition only use a branch to play the 3 young masters. I was injured." What? Xiang'er and Kir competed, Xiang'er actually injured Kir. Changjiangba's tone was full of surprises again. Yes, the owner, and the 4 young masters are still only a branch, and the 3 young masters use a wooden axe. Changbo added. How is this possible? Changyang Pa once again stood up from the chair and said, Xiang'er can't cultivate the power of the Holy Spirit at all, but in contrast, Kir is not only 3 years older than Xiang'er, but also the power of the Holy Spirit. I reached the 3rd level, plus I was practicing martial arts every day. How could I be defeated by Xiang, who would not have martial arts? At this time, Changbo's hand suddenly appeared a half-meter-long branch, saying, Homeowner, the 4 young masters used this branch to defeat the 3 young masters. Changyang Pa borrowed the branch that Changbo had handed over even a little more than the little finger, and at the other end of the branch, there was a little bit of blood. When Chang Yanba's gaze fell on the dried blood at the point where the branches were broken, his face suddenly became dignified. Tong Bo, Ku is okay. 3 young masters are fine, just broke the skin. Chang Bo replied. Changyang Pa nodded slightly, and his face was so good that he looked at it. Then he took the branch in his hand and looked it carefully several times. The look in his eyes became more and more doubtful. Finally, he couldn't help but say, Changbo, this is just an ordinary branch that can no longer be ordinary, and the tip is also extremely flat. With the strength of Xiang, it is impossible to use this branch because it is impossible to hurt Ku. After listening to this, Changbo nodded slightly, but his eyes gradually revealed a trace of fineness, said, Homeowners, I have a bold guess, the 4 young masters may not be a waste person who cannot cultivate the power of the Holy Spirit, and see the 4 young masters today the performance. Perhaps the 4 young masters have already cultivated the power of the Holy Spirit, and at least the 4th layer of strength of the holy power, otherwise, the 4 young masters cannot defeat the Xiao Tu with the 3-tiered power. When Yen, Chang Yanba's face is slightly fascinating, and there is a fascinating look in the eyes. For this 4 sons who have been talented since childhood, but they are unable to cultivate, this has always been the biggest regret in Changyang. Changbo, you mean that Xiang can not only cultivate the power of the Holy Spirit, but also a cultivation genius? Chang Yanba's tone is slightly trembling, full of excitement. At the age of 7, I reached the 4th floor of the holy power. This is indeed a rare genius on the Tianyuan continent. After all, under normal circumstances, it is generally necessary to reach the 4th level of the holy power. Changbo nodded slightly, said, For young masters, I was watching him grow up, his extraordinary talent, I am clearly clear, for the 4 young masters, my heart has always had great expectations, fain I feel that in the near future, the achievements of the 4 young masters will definitely surpass me. Hearing the words behind Changbo, Chang Yang's body couldn't help but tremble slightly, and his eyes showed a look of disbelief and ecstasy. Changbo continued, When I learned that the 4 young masters were a waste person who could not cultivate the power of the Holy Spirit, I felt very strange. I always felt that this seemed a bit wrong, but I never understood where it was. The problem, until today, from the 2 things that the 4 young masters have made, I have confirmed that my previous guess is correct. The 4 young masters are not the ones who cannot cultivate the power of the Holy Spirit. Instead, they are still a cultivation genius. Changjiangba took a deep breath and slowly calmed down his excitement. When he was about to say something, suddenly a family member ran in and said respectfully to Changyang's tyrant, Homeowner, the 3 young masters were injured. The 3 ladies asked the owner to go over the past. No, you can retire. Changjiangba waved his hand and said in a plain tone. Yes. Jia Ding respectfully responded and slowly retired. Chang Yang's gaze looked at the housekeeper Chang Bo and smiled lightly. Chang Bo, it's better to look at it together, and to take care of Xiang's by the way, this time is really cold. Said here, Chang Yang Pa Wei suddenly, the tone is serious. Chang Bo, the two kitchen buddies who are bullying Xiang, are still bothering you to drive them out of my Changyang house. Hey, two people, actually bullying me to the son of Changjiangba. Of. Chang Bo smiled and said, homeowners, those two people I have already driven them out of the government, even though one of them is introduced by the big lady Ling Long, the other is the younger brother of the Fuzhong Guard Captain Hill, but since they dare to bully on the head of the four young masters, there is no need for them to stay in the government. Otherwise, what is the face of my Changyang government? In a large, luxuriously decorated room, Changjiang, who was injured by Jian Chen, was lying on the bed, his face slightly pale, and the wound on his chest had been carefully wrapped. On the bedside, Changjiang's mother, Yu Fengyan, looked at her son with a heartache. Not far away, Jian Chen and her mother by Yuntian, and the aunts exquisite, two aunts, white jade cream, second sister, Changyang Mingyue, they are standing in the room. Yu Fengyan turned back and looked at the blue sky with a sullen look. The tone was a bit gloomy. For sisters, your baby son is getting more and more bold. Actually, he used a weapon to injure Ku, but fortunately, Ku Erfu is a big fate, and the injury is not serious. Otherwise, I really don't know what the consequences will be. After listening to this, Jian Chen frowned and said with dissatisfaction, this is no stranger to me. It is the third brother who asked me to compare with him, and it is inevitable that the two sides will be slightly injured. I am not using a weapon, just a branch. If you want to blame, then you can only blame the three brothers for not learning. Yu Fengyan was greeted by the words of Jian Chen, but the sentence of Jian Chen was quite reasonable, so that Yu Fengyan could not find anything. When I thought that I was being stumped by a child of a few years old, Yu Fengyan's heart raised a nameless anger, especially the last sentence of Jian Chen's sentence. If you blame, you can only blame the three brothers for not learning well. This sentence, let Yu Fengyan face a burst of white. This is not to clarify that his son is not as good as a man who cannot cultivate the power of the Holy Spirit. Seeing that Yu Fengyan was actually suffocated by a child of a few years old, Bian Tian and Jian Chen's two aunts felt a bit of laughter in their hearts, only the aunt's exquisite faceless expression.